I'm James Rule. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, where we help existing and aspiring leaders find clarity, build resilience, drive performance, and enhance fulfilment. At the start of 2025, I committed to 10 simple steps. They've transformed my performance professionally and personally and given me a whole new level of fulfillment. I'm going to share those 10 steps with you today, and I believe you can apply them with equal success to both your professional role and personal life. I talk a lot about high performance, and the best articulation of that I've ever come across comes from the former Manchester United footballer Phil Neville, and he articulated high performance as doing the best that you can in the moment you are in with the resources you have available. I love that definition. And my mission as a coach and as a trainer is to help people develop the tools, the tactics, the insights to give them more resource, to raise the level of their best so that you can tackle whatever is put in front of you at whatever moment in time you are in. And so practice what you preach was a message pinging around in my mind at the end of 2024 as I was rolling into the start of 2025. And please don't worry if you're listening to this several years down the track. This is content that is as relevant to you in 2027 as 2028 as 2029. It doesn't matter when you listen to it. The principle is accessing these insights and applying them to your own life. So back to that notion of practice what you preach. I spend every waking day working with individuals and teams trying to develop high levels of performance and crucially high levels of fulfillment. The two go hand in glove for me. Life is not a dress rehearsal. It's no use saying, well, work is work and I'll just make the best of it. And eventually when I retire decades from now, that's when the real fulfillment will come. Not to be morbid, but who can guarantee us that we will have our health, our faculties, or that we'll even get to those retirement age? So it's important to explore every opportunity for fulfillment, both in our professional role and our personal life immediately. And so I spend a lot of time establishing clarity with individuals. Where are you? What does success look like for you? Where do you want to get to? And how are we going to get there? And naturally, it would be very inauthentic of me not to apply the same principles. And we all do it. I think it's hardwired in our software systems that as a year draws to a close, we start to reflect, we start to plan about where we aspire to be in the forthcoming year. I'm no different. And I wanted to make some improvements. As I was reflecting on 2024, there was lots of things to be happy and grateful for. Of course there were, but there was also a lot that I felt was suboptimal. I was underperforming in areas and I wanted to change that. I wanted to fast forward to the Christmas holidays of 2025 with a sense of satisfaction that I'd made progress, that I'd moved things forward in the core aspects of my life. And again, I don't want to go too much into detail of some of the strategies and tools I share with clients, but those of you that have worked with me will be familiar with the circles of life. It's my principle of the interlinked circles that represent all the core areas of our life: our physical health, our mental health, our relationships, our hobbies, our work, our finances, our friendships, our extended family dynamics. All of these things have a part to play in driving our well-being, our performance levels, and our sense of fulfillment. And we can't neglect any one because it's like having a slow puncher. If we're not able to give attention to these areas, eventually we reap the consequences down the road. So all of this being said, what did I actually do? Well, I'm going to walk you through the 10 steps now that seem so simple, but have made a massive difference. I can hand on heart with absolute sincerity say, when I look back 12 months prior to this date of recording, where I was, how I felt about things, and how I feel about them now, and where I am in tangible progress terms, it's a completely different picture. So I hope these resonate and they give you food for thought about steps that you can take as you start to plan out your actions and your roadmap for 2026. The first step was I implemented a complete news ban, a full detox from the news in all its forms: radio, TV, social media, online, you name it, I put the barrier up and said, enough. Now, that might seem ridiculously hardline, but I'd been aware for a number of years just how the news was making me feel. The constant exposure to horror stories, negativity, doom and gloom was having a real tangible impact on my mindset, my energy, and the creativity and presence I could bring to all aspects of my life. And knowing the negative impact it was having, I decided to run an experiment. So the initial experiment was just let's have a detox through the month of January, reflect and review how I feel. Because this was a huge step for me. I've always prided myself on being super connected to what's going on in the world, listening to the news every day, watching the relevant TV shows in the UK, the likes of Newsnight, reading the papers on the weekend, and staying abreast of what's going on in the world. So to consider just a complete block on that was a huge step for me. So the mini challenge was let's get to the end of January and see how I feel. And sure enough, the world did not stop turning, but I felt different. I felt less down, for want of a better word. Not reading about these horrendous stories of death and destruction and economic doom and gloom had actually made me feel a lot better. And I could feel how that was impacting me in both my relationships and my presence as a professional. So I then extended that. I extended that through February. And once I got through February and March, I was like, I'm not missing anything here. Yes, I'm still aware of major global events because they have a way of finding their way back to you through your professional social circles, through my wife. You find out if something major's happening. But I didn't need to consume that daily intake. So having felt the impact on my mindset of the news ban, I also became aware of a secondary benefit, and that was improved efficiency. I started to really become conscious of just how much time I would spend in the day just checking in on the news. That easy access through our phones is ever tempting us to just pop on a site quickly. And there's always a story, there's always a headline that draws you in. And by implementing that media ban, I was gaining that time back. So I applied that logic into my second key step, which was challenging myself to stop reading sports reports. Now, that might sound a bit nuanced, and you might say, well, how's that relevant to me? But the principle I want you to think about here is where are your primary distractions? Where do you lose time in the day? It might not be sports reports. It might be looking at online retail sites. It might be looking at travel sites. It might be scrolling on social media platforms. In my experience as a coach, the biggest barrier to people's growth, progress, and fulfillment is this notion that I haven't got time. The reality is, the harsh reality is, we've all got time. We're just not choosing to apply it in a way that gives us the results we aspire to and indeed deserve. So I was becoming increasingly aware of, I feel better not being on the news. Wow, I was losing a lot of time there. Naturally, my mind took me to, well, where else do I lose time? And it was that quick check-in with the sports websites. Sport is a huge passion of mine. Playing sport will always be a huge passion of mine, and I love to watch sporting events. But in between that participation and viewing of events, I realized I was losing a huge amount of time just having a quick break, jumping on my phone and getting the latest match reports, the latest insights to the sports that I was passionate about. And seeing the benefit I'd got from the news ban, I decided to implement a sports website ban. Not a ban on me playing sport, not a ban on me watching sport, just a restriction of how long can you go without checking in with a sports website. Naturally, I can feel the challenge as you're listening to this. Well, hang on a sec, James. Where's this going? I enjoy reading the news, or I enjoy checking in on the sports websites, or I enjoy scrolling on social media. And if you enjoy it and it puts you in a good mindset and you come out of those experiences feeling fulfilled and energized, then far be it from me to say you need to stop them. But think of what alternatives are draining your time and resource. There will be something. It might be a person, it might be frequent conversations, it might be a habit that you wish you could stop doing. For me, I was hearing this, I haven't got time. I was starting to feel it myself, And naturally, I cannot be an authentic coach if I don't try to put into play what I'm talking about. So I was becoming cognizant of, wow, I waste a lot of time checking in on the news and sport. So I needed an additional motivator, something to really hold my discipline in terms of trying to remove that temptation to just quickly check the news or sporting websites, because it wouldn't just be a quick check. So this takes me into my third tip. I booked an extra round of golf every week. That was my reward for holding the line and not succumbing to the temptation of scrolling news and sporting websites. So again, you will have something that fits with you. How is this relevant? Sport is a passion. Golf is probably my predominant passion, and it has so many benefits for me and my level of fulfillment. There's that physical activity. There's that wonderful benefit to your mental health of being out in fresh air, in nature, socializing with people. There's that eternal quest of trying to improve yourself and improve your skills and your competency. But I've always struggled with giving myself permission to go and spend 3 hours or so on a golf course. You start to get twitchy, nervous. I should be at work. I should be making calls. I should be doing my emails. So I've often struggled with truly committing to try and maximize the enjoyment of that sport. So I joined these first three steps together. I was aware that I was easily spending at least 3 hours a week scrolling news and sports websites. So therefore, if I could stop doing that, I could do something far more impactful on my health, well-being, and mindset, but be no worse off from a net time point of view. I didn't have to lose anything. I just had to reallocate the time. But you need to make the commitment. It's that old notion of burn the boats. By actually blocking in an additional round of golf, I then had some accountability, because if I continued my habit of scrolling, reading the news, checking in on the sports websites, and also built in that extra round of golf, then I really was going to start to compromise my ability to drive my business forward and to be fully present in my other personal interests, my relationships, etc. So that I found was a really powerful way to drive my discipline. I started to experience that extra round of golf, loved it, felt the reward of it, linked it with that resistance to scrolling, and it became a lot easier. So what's your reward? What can you stop doing? Where can you reallocate that time? Maybe it's lunch with a friend. Maybe it's an extra couple of gym workouts. Maybe it's pursuing another passion. How much time can you save? And how are you going to allocate it? And if you're thinking, well, I don't have that much time, have a look at your phone now. Have a look at the screen apps that show you where your time is going, how much time is going on them on an average day. I guarantee you can find an hour or two in a week where you're like, I don't really need to do that. Start there. And then identify your reward, commit to it, book it in, and you can start to reap the benefits. So these principles that I'm talking about are very much about my journey this year, but it's timely. We're doing this as 2025 is drawing to a close. And I want you to be thinking about how you can adopt this and implement this in your life to build a really successful 2026. But truth be told, it doesn't matter when you're listening to this, whether you're halfway through 2026, halfway through 2027, start immediately. Make those changes to reap the benefits to your performance and your fulfillment. I've always liked the quote, life's not a dress rehearsal. I've mentioned it in many of the episodes. My daughters roll their eyes at me. They feel it's ever so cheesy. And it is, but it's true. We get one shot. Why not make the changes that make sure you get the best out of your life? So wherever you are listening to this, whatever the year is, whatever the time of year it is, start to make those changes. The fourth key step was I made sleep a priority. For too long, I'd labor under the assumption that I don't sleep very well. But actually, that was a lie. I can sleep better, but I wasn't setting myself up to sleep well. So I got under the bonnet of that statement and started to make changes that enhanced my sleep quality, which in turn drove my energy and made sure that I could raise my level of performance in every role that I undertake. How did I do that? The 3-2-1. Making sure that I ate 3 hours before I went to bed, making sure that I stopped working 2 hours before I went to bed, and reducing access to digital screens 1 hour before I went to bed. The 3-2-1 principle made a massive difference. It's not an exact science. I know it's not always easy to eat that consistently early before you go to bed. Sometimes our work and our social and our personal commitments will disrupt that. But as an overriding principle, that was my aspiration. Eat earlier so that the digestive system is not disrupting my sleep. Have a defined cutoff for work. Work will have to be done on evenings at some point. We can't walk out the office at 4 o'clock every day and that's it. But we can still hold the line and have a discipline to say there is a cutoff point. And for me, that's 7:30. 7:30, beyond that, I'm not doing any more work. And then that reduction of access to a phone to reduce that sort of melatonin disruption and that access to blue screens. We all know how that disrupts sleep. Those 3 simple steps made a huge difference. Now, if I was to build in a 4B, if you will, another key aspect to improve my sleep quality was to commit to a consistent going to bed time and waking up time. I'm guilty of, always have been, that sporadic bedtime, depending on what's gone on in the day and how I was winding down and how wired I was still from work. So I may end up falling into bed at 9:30, 10, 11, half to 11, midnight. And consequently, my wake up time was always early, but always felt a bit of a struggle. 10 p.m. That became my non-negotiable. I want to be lights out at 10 p.m. Again, just like the 3-2-1, it's not an exact science, but the principle trained my body. Even if I was still trying to be active, move by 10 p.m., I was ready for sleep and I fell asleep so much more effectively. And then the second part of that was I got up consistently at the same time every day, including Saturday and Sunday. I won't bore you with the science on this, but there's lots of detail out there about the long-term health benefits to our heart health and other aspects of our health to a consistent bedtime and wake-up time. But from a short-term impact perspective, it really improved my sleep quality, my energy, and my ability to step into the day with a really high level of resilience, an empowered mindset, and a full tank of energy. The 5th key step, I reduced alcohol consumption. I would never say that I drank excessively, but there was sporadic drinking throughout the week and probably a higher level of drinking on a weekend. Now, we're talking about a beer here or there, a glass of whiskey here or there, a glass of wine occasionally. But I realized that that will only disrupt that sleep quality. And if sleep is a priority, do I really need to do it? I was guilty of the fact of watching certain shows, Billions, Ray Donovan, Peaky Blinders, a variety of shows you may have seen, and they're constantly drinking whiskey in that. I think that was subliminally sending me a message. I found myself drinking more and more whiskey. But on a serious note, I just realized, well, do I really need to do it? It's just a habit. I'm just reaching for it because it's convenient. See a nice cold beer in the fridge when I open the door, so I'll just have it. Did I go cold turkey on that? No, absolutely not. But I restricted having a drink to weekends. No more drinking on a school night. And, special occasions, going out for a meal with loved ones, etc. Of course, I would enjoy a drink still. I'm not saying you have to go completely teetotal. You maybe want to. But for me, it was a step that improved my sleep quality and that helped drive my performance. The 6th step was re-anchoring reading into my morning routine. I'm a huge advocate of doing something proactively for you when you first wake up. It doesn't really matter what it is, but it needs to be proactive as opposed to reactive. It has a transformational impact on your energy, your mindset, and how you step into the day. A passion of mine is reading. I wasn't doing enough of it. That was niggling at me. It's a core strategy for me to maintain good mental health, reduce stress and anxiety. I love to learn. I love to read. But I wasn't doing enough of it. And that was putting me in a bit of a funk. So the easy game-changing step that I took was I am going to enjoy reading for at least half an hour with a cup of coffee when I wake up. And that became a really powerful, proactive way to start my day in that quiet space before any of the rest of the family were awake, to have that quiet moment, that time to learn, that time to reflect and to read. All of these points align. You'll be sensing that. Going to bed at a consistent time, waking up at a consistent time made it much easier to anchor in the morning routine. Applying the 3-2-1, reducing the alcohol consumption, all meant my sleep quality was better, which allowed me to get up more effectively at the early time that I wanted and be able to sit and enjoy a book without craving going back to sleep. So all these points are reflections, guys. I am not applying any judgment. I am not patronizing anybody. I'm not saying you need to go to bed at the same time as me, or that you have to manage your alcohol consumption the same way. Everybody's different. We're all unique. But I have felt this huge shift and benefit in my level of fulfillment and my performance. And when I talk about performance, it's business performance, driving the lonely leader forward, performance and presence as a dad, as a husband, as a friend. All of these things are what drive my levels of fulfillment. And having felt this big shift through 2025, I wanted to share it with you because I don't believe this roadmap is complex. I think it's just small, disciplined steps being taken consistently that amalgamate back into some seismic shifts in how I feel about everything that's going on in my life and equally how I am performing. The seventh step was building in some present non-negotiables. What do I mean by that? My most important job in this world is as a dad. So I want to be as present as I can with my daughters. Is that always possible? Yes. But is it a challenge? Of course it is, because the rest of life, work, travel, looking after staff, clients, extended family, we've all got commitments that can erode our ability to be present. And we take time for granted, but time is not a given. And I was increasingly frustrating myself that, am I present enough? Now, I'd love to say there is that proverbial magic bean that you just take that and everything's fixed. Of course, that's a nonsense. But what I recognized was, why don't I commit to some small, seemingly insignificant steps, but when I again aggregate those together, I will feel significantly different about my presence. So let me give you just a couple of examples. Non-negotiable bedtime story. For my youngest daughter, we locked in a certain time every night rather than a fluid moving time. This is the time. She needs to be ready in bed and I will come in and read a story. That was a lovely point of connection that became a challenge. How many of these can I do in a month? Then it became a non-negotiable. I'm doing it when I'm not traveling or on the road every single night. Another simple step was playing a bit of table tennis when the girls come in from school. It might only be for 5 or 10 minutes, but being able to stop, take a break, have a quick conversation over the table tennis table was an activity we all enjoyed, and it brought that connectivity together. Just another quick example, taking the dog out together. Often, as most people listening to will feel this pain, a dog is purchased as a family pet and everybody talks about we'll all walk it together and it'll all be a great, and what's the reality? Come rain or shine, you're the person taking that dog out, and I'm very much in that role. But that being said, on a serious note, I challenge my daughters to say, let's walk the dog more often together because it's a lovely way to connect and be present. So you will find your own ways, and it's not necessarily regarding children. You maybe don't have children. It might be presence with your partner, presence with a sibling, presence with a good friend. How can you commit to a small step? It might be organizing a daily walk together at the same time every week, after work or on a weekend, where you can look forward to it and lock in that sense of presence. Because what you know, and I know with absolute certainty, is when we're not present, it erodes our sense of fulfillment. We know we should be, we recognize we're not, we can't get out of that spiral, we get irritated with ourselves, it disempowers our mindset and our energy. Conversely, when we spend some quality time with the people we care about the most, it does the polar opposite. We are energized, our mindset's empowered, our resilience is higher, and we perform better professionally. So lock in some of your own presence habits and start committing to them immediately. My 8th step was tracking activity through a journal. I've talked in previous episodes about the power of a journal. I love the accountability it brings. And a lot of the things we were talking about, I tracked in my journal. So for example, I'd put a little bar chart tally, a little tick if I went the day without looking at the news, another tick if I went the day without looking at a sports website, another tick if I'd had a bedtime story with my daughter. These simple steps release dopamine into our brain, that feel good. Oh, I'm making progress. And we all love to have that sense of making progress. But equally, when you start to see that momentum, when you start to see those tallies moving forward, you don't want to break that chain. And I was particularly relying on this at the start of the year when I was trying to get to the month end. Can I go a month without looking at the news? Then I've done a month. Oh, can I go 2? And once you get that momentum, oh, can I do 3? Now I'm at that point going, wow, I'm closing in on 12 months. So whatever habits you're committing to, track them in your journal. The more you write down the progress with ticks or a little comment or whatever you need to do, the more your brain recognizes how important this is to you, the more dopamine you get, and the easier it is to stay accountable. Conversely, when it's just a sort of loose aspiration in your head with no accountability and no tangible way of tracking, it becomes much easier to fall over and, oh, well, I'll succumb. Well, it was a nice idea. And that's what happens to so many of us, particularly with the best of intentions at the start of a new year. We have resolutions and we fall away. Track them, record it. It makes it easier to stay on point. Step number 9, press ups and planks. Now, that sounds like a theatre production. For me, I wasn't happy with my level of physical health. I wasn't happy with my energy, my discipline, my body shape. There was lots of things that need improvement, and that is still a key area of focus. But again, chunking things down to manageable steps. I just issued myself a challenge. I'm going to do X number of press-ups and a plank every morning. Start there. Now, of course, it's easy to, well, that won't make a difference. But done consistently, it does, because you're getting that dopamine hit. You're feeling the benefits of actually delivering on a promise to yourself. And then over time, you start to feel the physical differences in your strength. The number of press-ups you can do increases. The length of time you can hold a plank increases. And then you start to feel a shift in your appearance because of that work. And so now that has become a key part of my morning routine. I take the dog out for a walk, bring the dog in, clean her up, and then before I hit the shower, it's just a set of press-ups and a bit of work doing front and side planks. Is that a revolutionary workout routine? Absolutely not. Do I need to do more? Yes. But what I like about it is it takes 2 or 3 minutes at the start of every day, and then I've done something constructive for my health, which feels different. And that then leads into other behaviors. Having done that, it influences how I'm thinking about diet. It encourages me to do other things, to build some runs in, etc. So again, I like the simplicity because irrespective of where we are, we can all start small. Maybe it's press ups and planks, maybe it's something else. Maybe you need to start doing just some body weight squats, or maybe it's just another commitment that you can make to yourself. But whatever it is, start small and then hold yourself to it and build from there. And my 10th step was be disciplined with my net time. Net time stands for no extra time. Things you can do whilst you're doing something else. So my personal example is I love to be the taxi driver and support my children get into the various sporting practices and lessons, etc. But invariably, there's dead time in the car, waiting outside or sitting on the sidelines. And your temptation is to go back to where I started this episode. I'll just check in on the sports websites. I'll just check in on the news. In your case, it might be I'll just check a particular social media site. And you're wasting hours and hours every week looking at absolutely nothing. So I made that conscious effort that when I take my daughters to the dance class, I'll make sure at that point I can't go inside and watch. It's a closed studio. So I will read. For that hour, I will sit in the car and I will read. For other activities where I can watch, when they've got a sporting lesson, for instance, sporting activity, I will put on a podcast and sit and enjoy that. Now, obviously, sometimes you're interacting with other parents, you're having a conversation, absolutely fine. But there is a lot of time, and I'm sure for any of the parents listening, you will realize, yeah, I have a load of dead time where I just scroll. Do something with it. The volume of books I've consumed, the volume of podcasts I've consumed has absolutely gone through the roof this year. That makes me more relaxed, happier, because that is a passion of mine to learn and to grow. But equally, it's made me a better coach, mentor, and trainer because I've enhanced my knowledge library from which I can draw upon to be more effective in my coaching and mentoring work. So what is that for you? What would you like to be doing? I worked with a lady recently who loved to cross stitch. It was something that she used to do a lot when she was younger, doesn't do it anymore. And she started to embrace that net time to say, well, actually, I'm sitting in the car once again, waiting for one of her children. And she started to re-engage with that passion. So this isn't all about having children. For those of you that don't, I fully appreciate that that doesn't resonate. But where do you go where you're stuck doing something that you could actually be feeding your own mind, your own growth and development? Rather than sitting listening to the news in a traffic jam for the 6th time of the day, You could be listening to a podcast or an audiobook. That's one of the easiest things. When you're on your commute, when you're traveling around, put something in that is investing in your growth and development. So there it is. 10 simple steps. At the front end, it was all about removing disruption, distraction, the news, the sporting websites, and reallocating that into something that I was passionate about, getting that extra round of golf every week. We then talked about the improvements to sleep quality, looking at the 3-2-1, a consistent bedtime and waking time to really put myself in the best physical and mental state for a proactive day. We talked about reducing alcohol consumption and then really anchoring something into my morning routine. For me, it was reading to put me in the best mental state and to enhance my mindset. We then looked at simple present habits. So one day doesn't drift by into a week, into a month, into a year, and you think, oh, I'm still not being present. For me, it was the simplicity of playing a bit of table tennis with my girls, having a regular bedtime story with my youngest, taking the dog out together, and all of a sudden you feel better because you've truly connected. Journaling. If you don't track stuff, if you don't measure it, it's much harder to hold yourself to account. The simple press up and plank. Start anywhere. Start wherever you are on your physical health journey and do something consistently. And then last but not least, lean into that net time. Where can you take those dead spots in your working and personal lives to invest in you? None of that in isolation is groundbreaking reinvention of the wheel. But for me, those 10 things I put at the center of a totally different year. So what's the outcome? I feel more connected to my wife and to my children. I feel more present. That's really important to me. Going back to that point of life is not a dress rehearsal. I do not want to be the guy that looks back and my family say to me, well, we never saw Dad. He was just always working. He was always distracted. I've heard that so many times in my life from other people, and it is a major source of regret. That's not going to happen in my case. Equally, I want to grow my business. I want the Lonely Leader to help as many people on their journey of growth and development. And 2025 has been the best year on every matrix that I look at. The number of people we've worked with, the financial income generated as a consequence of that work, the level of testimonials and the sincerity of the comments that have come back in terms of the impact we've made. So whichever way I slice it, it's been our best year. I feel more present. I feel healthier. I feel a lower level of stress. And there has to be a root cause for all of that, because for this year, more than any other that I can recall, I made a disciplined set of commitments and I've stuck with it. Now, for any of you wrestling with some of the, oh, I could never do a news ban, I do not miss it. The temptation has gone. I'm 11 months in and there is zero temptation to go and scroll through all of the negativity that's out there. Does that make me ignorant? No, because so much of that negativity I cannot control. And that's the fundamental truth I want to leave you with. Why am I drowning myself in negative news reporting that I cannot control? Even the recent budget, which will date this podcast, I appreciate, but at the time of recording, the UK has just announced its budget. The news is full of it. I cannot change that until such time as there is a general election and I can cast my vote to decide who I want to represent me in government. What about knowing how it impacts your business? Well, that's the beauty of my accountant. He will compile all the relevant things for me and I can access it through him without having to read endless negative reported stories about the budget. So I'm just giving you a bit of context at the end there, that for somebody who was super passionate about it, that would have the news on in the radio, that would have the news on the TV, that would be scrolling it every day, having gone through this process, I don't miss it. And I have got a better mindset, energy as a consequence. Let's tie it back into that presence point. When you want to be present with the people you most love, your partner, your siblings, your parents, your children, whoever it is, if you are in a disempowered state, negative, despondent because of what you're reading and exposed to, it makes it 10 times harder to be present. We've all snapped at people we love because we've just finished reading something or we've just been connected to something that's put us in a bit of a funk. Remove that to enhance the presence. I'm at the risk of repeating myself now, so I will pause there. I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to hear what habits you have made non-negotiable. I would love to hear how you have built that high-performance life for yourself. Some of these will resonate. There'll be some things that you're doing that I haven't even talked about. And as I keep saying throughout this episode, wherever you are listening to this, whatever the time of year it is, whatever month you're in, whatever year you're in, do not think this is an annual exercise that can only be completed at the start of a new year. This can start tomorrow. You can start making changes today and start monitoring it with immediate effect. So as ever, I wish you the very best of luck. If this content resonates, as we always say, please do follow it on the podcast, like, subscribe if you're watching it on YouTube, and share it with people that you think would benefit from hearing this message. Our mission is simple: to help people find more clarity, to drive that performance, to enhance their resilience, and just find whole new levels of fulfillment. We all want that. We all need that. And the more we can share this sort of content, the more likelihood we have of helping people achieve it. I wish you the very best of luck. Thanks for listening to the Lonely Leader podcast. I'd be very grateful if you could share and follow if the content resonates. And if you're looking for additional free resource to support your continued growth and development, then please do check out our social media and website details in the show notes. Remember, quality leadership on the outside must always start within.